Okay, guys, and girls, my name is Goran Slavic, and I'm a chief engineer at Serbian Open Exchange. But I'm not going to talk about exchange stuff, but about security concerns related to internet-connected devices and the Internet of Things. While in the old days, I know I'm sounding a little old, but I'm not that old, but who was communicating over the internet in the old days? Well, there were servers, there were big stationary, they had large energy needs. There were terminals that were sort of umbilical tied to those servers. They wouldn't go far from those servers. There was a small number of devices on the internet, on something that was even then not called internet, but which we call the basics of the internet that we see today. And computers were mostly in the same room or most probably in the same building. And you can actually trace where the computer is by a cable that it was connected to. Who was the threat in those days? Well, there were a small number of people that even knew what internet was, and those who knew it, well, there was a small number of people that could get away with doing something bad on the internet. So what is the present situation? Well, who is connected on the internet? Well, mostly everybody is connected on the internet. Internet-connected devices can be anywhere in the world, and they could be talking to other internet-connected devices that are anywhere in the world. And there is a large number of devices on the internet, which is a gross understatement, but bear with me. And not only that computers are based anywhere in the world, but the services that those computers are using are anywhere else on the world or at the same location where they are used. And the tracing of the source of the problem, well, now the tracing of the problem is the problem in itself. Who is the threat nowadays? Well, mostly everybody is a threat. There is a large number of people that can bypass network security measures, and the security awareness of the customers with the growth of internet, the growth of mobile devices is not very high. What will happen in the future? Well, in the future, who will be communicating? But not only people, but large number of devices will be communicated over the internet. There are a large number of automated services who will not have any kind of human control or will be completely autonomous of any human intervention or will be monitored loosely every 3 or 4 or 7 hours. Services that are critical to the function of the society as a whole will be based on internet or will be highly dependent on the good internet connection, reliable internet connection, or they will cease to function unless they have a good internet as a base of their service operation. And who will be threat? Well, again, everybody and everything. We might even say that people in the future won't be the biggest problem, but that some kind of high-tech smart refrigerator will start to participate in a DDoS attack. With the little bit of geeky, how shall I put it, pizzazz that you can say about IoT, you know, controlling remotely something in your home, your refrigerator telling you that you are out of milk and so on. People will need to buy those things, but unfortunately the security awareness of the customers probably won't be able to keep up with the demands of the secure network that those kind of devices will have to be on. What are the reasons for the concern? Well, internet, as this was already mentioned, is the backbone of the modern society. There is a problem with quality of internet-connected devices, problem with number of them, problem with individual security of each of those internet devices, and the absolute simplicity of gaining information and sort of unofficial training in the network intrusion, and also, let's call it technical inertia and lack of problem awareness that exists at the customer side. And also we can point out to some of the small devices that can produce very nasty results like Raspberry Pi or similar small computers. but let's go into details. Quality of internet-connected devices. There is an old sort of a joke that Staff Sergeant says to a private, never forget your equipment was built by the lowest bidder. So IoT is a new and expanding field of study and innovation. A large number of companies are competing on the market, but while for professional use, customer might buy a professional device, for personal use on the large scale of population that is sort of average consumer will probably decide to buy a device based on price alone. Also, there is a lot of knockoff devices or unsophisticated devices on the market, and even the price of such a device might not be a guarantee of a quality of such device, especially in the segment of the network security, because that could be something that could be left behind or not implemented for the cost of lower security. Also, most of the things that we talk of in the IoT is a specification for a larger autonomy. We expect that some of those sensors or devices work for hours, days, even weeks without recharging completely autonomously, and that means that energy budget of some of those devices might not be such that there is a room for a network security equipment on them, on some chip that would code that transmissions or some access list that would prevent unauthorized IPs, for example, for entering such a device. Number of internet-connected devices, I keep calling that because if one device is compromised, a large-scale damage can be brought, and there are a lot of devices connected on our home. There will be more. It's an understatement to describe large number of both wired and wireless devices in our workplace. And filtering and access control of some of these devices, especially on that large scale, could present a problem even for a trained network engineer, and for a regular average customer that's really almost impossible for him to handle. And also, network security of internet devices, you can hardly expect some sort of home-based sensor to have a sophisticated firewall access and controls and ability to conform to issues in the network and so on. And most of the devices are projected to have two-way control, two-way communication, which means that some attacker would actually know if he was gaining results. It's not like he was shooting packets into oblivion. Some of the things can be arranged and there is a feedback on what he's doing. Information training and network intrusion techniques. Well, again, the saying goes, professionals are predictable, the world is full of dangerous amateurs. There is a large number of internet sites that offer basic resources and even knowledge for successful network intrusion. Some of these methods don't require a lot of knowledge about how actually protocols and internet works. They are sort of plug and play, and even knowledge of how to prevent such a security incursion will probably come up a lot late for some of the affected users. Most of the suggested ideas for network intrusion will work even in some sort of enterprise environment. And most of these ideas will work not because there are no countermeasures, but unfortunately because those countermeasures are not implemented. Also, the biggest thing about IoT, the customer, unfortunately, the customer is a large part of the problem and a small part of a solution, because a customer will expect that a power socket or some sort of a control will work the same way that it works as of now, but connected to internet. They will presume that those out-of-the-box solutions that they bought have all the security features that are needed, they have all the security features configured, and that they can simply plug and play them. Also, customers don't have technical knowledge for successful implementation of a home network. That should be the connection mechanism for some such IoT devices. It's hard for them to even understand that the firewall or antivirus software in their computer doesn't protect their smart television set or some other device of that type. Also, for the most of their internet knowledge is based on that one computer that is connected to the home router. All else is considered already configured, already automated, already secure. And even if you present a problem to a customer and explain to him that there is a problem with that device, they will believe that the existing security measures on that device will protect them. And Raspberry Pi. For all of you who know, that's a small computer. That's practically credit card sized. I even have one if you want to look at it later. And it has all the features of a little computer. It has USB ports, HDMI, the display port, camera thread connection. It even has GPIO ports, so you can actually control some sensors with it. It was developed as a tool for programming electronics classes in school. Now it has evolved into one of the main do-it-yourself platforms for home automation. If you Google Raspberry Pi project or something like that, you will find a bunch of really cute and really useful projects for Raspberry Pi. It is extremely easy to use, and by definition it's also very easy to misuse because it was meant as a teaching tool. That means that there are extensive online lectures, tutorials, literature. It is easily obtainable. So you can actually very easily connect it. You can very easily work with it, even with a little bit of very little knowledge. And it can even help you learn something like this. I don't know where I read it. It was even announced that it was one of the cheapest way to learn Linux, because it costs about 30 bucks, 30, 40 bucks, depending on where you buy it. It has an energy budget of about 2 watts, so you can plug and play it anywhere. And it's a very cheap way because it runs on Raspbian. It can be installed as a Kali Linux, Arch Linux. It has even a CentOS version of the operating system, which means it can very easily be used and by definition misused. And here are some sort of problematic scenarios that I put just as a starting of a panel that we will have after this. As I said in here, disclaimer, some of the things presented in these slides are rather trivial to defend against, but never forget you are in an IT conference, which means that either you or somebody close to you has the way to protect you against these things. But for our average customer, that most of these scenarios will present a rather big problem. For example, the VPN connection is a reverse tool. You have your work environment, you have your home environment, and you have a VPN tunnel to your work environment. Both places, both networks have the firewall installed and all the defenses needed. Your compromised device might do, but what about this? What if somebody for work sabotages your alarm clock? So you're late for a presentation or late for an important meeting. What if somebody is even more malicious, so it sabotages your refrigerator, so you end up with a rather bad case of stomach flu? Again, automated greenhouse. We have a greenhouse, we have sensors for moisture, for temperature, for all the things, and of course it's a feedback loop that it connects to some sort of irrigation control, and you can connect it and control some irrigation automatically if the soil doesn't have enough moisture, it can be corrected. But what if somebody places some nasty sensors that will give bad data, places them in a bucket of water, and your irrigation stops working? Remote access to the pacemakers. Continued heart monitoring, even remote continued heart monitoring, is a must for medical devices, especially for heart patients. Some of the new devices, beside monitoring, have a fully functioning defibrillator in case of emergencies. And hacking of these devices, as the least concern, will confer some sort of privacy issues, as the worst case scenario, deadly consequences are actual possibility in these situations. US Food and Drug Administration even issued a set of recommendations for securing medical devices that could jeopardize the safety or privacy of the patients. You can even Google it. It's a rather nasty document. Post-market management and cybersecurity of medical devices. Raspberry Pi is an illegal Wi-Fi router. You need a Raspberry Pi version 2 or version 3, additional Wi-Fi dongle. Actually, if you have a Raspberry Pi 3, you don't need a Wi-Fi dongle. It has Wi-Fi on its own. You need a password to some kind of password to target company's Wi-Fi, or even you can connect it, if it's Raspberry 3, you can connect it to the Ethernet network. And some sort of Wi-Fi for the nearby office, and then you just install some Quagga or a bird for routing, and you can route out of the secure network. And what's worse, this device can be easily masked as an outboard storage or something like that. This was actually the experiment that I did. I connected my Raspberry Pi to a mobile phone power bank, and it gave me about 18 hours of autonomy. So I put it in my backpack and simply walked around Belgrade. I wrote a simple code. Actually, parts of that code are things that you need to do in order to connect your Raspberry Pi to a Wi-Fi. It's a basic tutorial. Do these things in order to connect to your Wi-Fi. I simply run it in a loop. And I tried to find networks that I could connect without password. And I recorded those SSIDs and positions of those unprotected networks. What were the results? About 10% of networks didn't have any Wi-Fi password setup. Around 10 to 50% of those networks did have a password, but that password was easily obtainable. For example, it was a Wi-Fi of a cafe, of a restaurant, of McDonald's. In around 20 to 25% of those networks that I could access, I could actually access the router by logging in with the default password, or either admin or admin none as the password combination. And this is not a demanding setup to make. That is something that took me one day to set up, and even an untrained person, I believe, wouldn't take more than a week to compromise a large number of routers with the device that can be put into the pocket. Now, Jan, to start the panel.